We're sorry about last weekend. We don't know what happened. That bit crushed aliased thing was a fluke. But for 24 minutes, we got more views per minute than like ever before. And I just want to say thank you. It's our job to or it's our goal to meet the aesthetic and stuff.
That was random.
Exceptional radio.
But really, though, I have no idea why that happened last week. And it was really surreal because it was like 8-bit and maybe 16 kilohertz audio at best. It was just awful sounding. You know, the funny thing is, I'm pretty sure that I've seen presets that are asking for money, like plugins. I mean, where the publisher or the developers ask for money to bit crush an alias sound like that, like some kind of digital distortion is desirable. And so maybe it was like some weird aesthetic thing that we touched on.
Yeah, I've definitely heard it as like a filter that you pay for or a free.
Like a ring modulator. The thing that's so peculiar is that there were no signs on my end that anything was wrong. Restream said everything was excellent, and even YouTube said the signal was excellent.
Yeah, it definitely felt like there was some weird random processing problem on their side somewhere, but it's hard to know where down the line it happened. But it was definitely not on our side because you sounded perfectly normal.
Yeah.
To me on our intra personal feed.
And I think that's the weird part. Like the voice over IP part worked fine. All of the signs pointed to yes. Like everything's good. Like there were no dropped frames. Our output stream rate was like in the green zone on all of the platforms. So it doesn't really. I'm limited in my options for reviewing. I don't have any logs. Like none of this stuff generates logs.
Well, and normally it would be pretty easy to isolate what sounds like a chord issue or somewhere, one of the settings being off. But when it didn't have a problem on our side, it's like that's when shit starts to get confusing.
Yeah. Especially since like if there was an issue with the USB port or any of that stuff, it would have shown me a system error. There'd been like a hardware error in my system log. There would have been some kind of driver issue that was recorded in the system logs. And none of that. And so I'm at a loss because I can't pin it on anything. It's just a fluke of the internet. Except for everything that I pulled up on my browser during that period of time came up just like, lickety split. And we didn't lose any quality of the voice before it goes out to YouTube. I think we're just going to have to chalk this up to like Ghosts in the Machine or whatever internet gremlins that exist. Because we can't see inside like Restream's back end or inside YouTube's back end.
Well, but I know I can see their front end, and I know that their algorithm is getting visibly worse at recommending things. And it's like, I saw a video of someone who was trying to see how many videos it would take before YouTube started recommending like right-wing political content. And it would be, eventually he like logged out and was using like an incognito browser and was using YouTube from Google, like the search, so he'd click on it on the video, like the first video from there, so he wasn't even searching anything. And I think the lowest he got was like 400 videos before it started just inundating you with like Fox News content.
Hmm.
And eventually he like blocked out a bunch of stuff and was like trying to see if he could block these certain things, if he could get it without recommending anything, and it still started recommending right wing content. So it's like on the front end, because I got a lot of stuff blocked now, and one of the main things I have blocked is like Joe Rogan. But even with him being like, I got so tired of type beats that I had to download an extension to block shit on YouTube, because I'm just like, I don't know what happened that made YouTube think that I wanted to hear somebody who doesn't have their own identity enough to be like, oh, this is a Timbaland type beat or a LP type beat or a RZA type beat, and them not be actual the person who they're saying this beat is like
Feeling lied
that,
to.
it's manipulation of the algorithm. It's manipulation of your attention, because all you see is the name that they're copying first, and
Yeah.
if you don't look to the whole thing.
Yeah, there's
like,
a German techno artist who likes to do Boris Brecha style. Boris Brecha style this, that, or something else.
oh, I fucking hate that
But
shit.
then at the end of the in the description it says by, their name. And I'm not going to say their name because I don't need to do that at this point. It's not even worth it. But for a long time when I would, search for some big banging techno to do some cleaning to, that stuff would pop up, and occasionally I would click on it. But then something very strange happened, and like they started to develop their own personal branding identity, and they started including images in their thumbnails that were just unappealing to me, and so it was really easy to identify who they were at that point. I think that's one of the problems. Something that I've noticed is there are a bunch of old channels that have disappeared, but they've created like new versions of themselves, but they upload all of their old content. So when I click on this thing that was like, this channel just started like this week. This is a new channel, and they've got like 2,000 videos. That's just
Yeah, because I know what they're doing. YouTube started a new partner program, like for where they're trying to focus on small creators. And so I imagine if they had like a channel that was over the upper limit, then they start a new channel trying to get around it. But they're gonna get found out eventually. So it's like,
or
yeah,
sometimes they come up with a creative reason to create a new channel, like Linus.
right. Oh my God. It's just it's frustrating to me. Like, I've been watching a lot of different RC channels, and they recommend, it's like insane how much, if you're watching anything, it doesn't matter if it's hip hop commentary, RC activity, RC commentary, they're gonna recommend a white content creator that looks exactly the same as every other white content creator, like 10 out of 10 times, until you make them stop recommending that person. And then you might start getting non-white creators where it's like, I finally started getting Asian RC content creators where I'm like, that's insane, because like I know there's like a huge Japanese RC scene.
Okay.
So like,
so I've always liked making things out of wood because it's easier than making things out of metal or plastics because I don't, there's a lower threshold of like the tooling and the requirements basically. And so I like to watch a lot of woodworking videos where people build benches or build chairs or cabinets or desks or whatever. Insert some kind of furniture to solve some kind of need. And I watched a video of this guy um, who builds studio grade furniture, like stuff that you find in recording studios, post production facilities, um, project studios, high end furniture. And he took apart a synthesizer and then rebuilt it into a wooden cabinet, and it looked like just fantastic. It looked like the kind of thing that you don't even ask how much it costs. You just know it's like, wow, that's a very impressive tool. And this guy's got this fantastic wood shop because he builds studio grade furniture, right? And I expect that kind of stuff when I see that kind of lighting and that kind of show and all that. But for the first time in all of my woodworking YouTube journeys of trying to find out like how to do stuff, I found this like Japanese jazz pianist who wanted to have access to the soft synths and electric keyboard sounds that he uses to make music in a actual portable device. And so this guy builds a cabinet, and he's got rudimentary tools, like the kind of tools that someone has because they watched a few videos and went to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever. And with maybe 1/10 the space and not even 1/5, no, not even that, 1/20th the material investment in tools, this guy made a cabinet that and did almost the exact same thing. Deconstructed a synthesizer, added a really nice keyboard, actually redid all of it, and then installed a Raspberry Pi, added a power module to it, custom made a face panel with knobs that he wired up himself, and then plugged into I don't know what it was. It was like a device that translates control voltage into MIDI signals, so like a USB controller, I think. But that's beside the point. So this guy that with like minimal tools did like this incredible job, like a high level of detail. I would say that it looked everything like what I would expect a Rhodes piano from back before they became like beyond expensive. So like back in the 90s, when they looked like they still were made out of like made with style. And he did a great job. And this guy looked a lot like me. He had long hair, and it was dark, and he's Asian, and he's just being really careful. And it was really impressive because YouTube doesn't show me this stuff very often. I have to specifically ask for like Japanese woodworking if I want to see that kind of craftsmanship with basic tools and lots of measurement.
So you remind me of this guy. He builds like wooden cars,
That stuff's so cool.
and like wooden motorcycles and all kinds of wooden vehicles. Um, but it was like his shit was going viral, but he wasn't getting most of the hits, and it would be like other people being like, "This guy built a car out of wood," instead of him being like, "I built a car out of wood," and it would be like, wonder why this is happening, and then you realize he's Asian, and the people who were getting the hits aren't, and it's like the way YouTube somehow manages to bring up somebody else's channel. This guy builds a Bugatti out of wood instead of the guy who actually built it. It's like that shit's insane, man. I don't ever I don't feel bad for my shit not blowing up on YouTube because I see how the algorithm works and I see how they try to push certain demographics. If you do the same type of content, same quality, so I'll actively like
They're YouTube DJs. They're
yeah.
people who comb through all of YouTube to find the goods, and then they re-represent it in the form of some kind of like remix, so that they can, you know, do the sales
And
pitch
some
to
of them
go
don't
to
even add anything. Some of them like just look at they'll just like look at it
and
and
react.
react. Like not say anything, just oh my god, shocked face. And it's like that's the lowest level of I guess you could say they're adding something to it. But I don't
Yeah,
know if it
they're
holds up
adding
in
a
court.
square of pixels that are changing, that are not related to the original content, that might actually be blocking necessary information. They add words on it sometimes, or effects. The one that gets me is when it's like clearly been like created on a mobile device, and then like the upper and lower third are these weird split blurred magnified sections that are really distracting, and then they put words in these sections and make it difficult to actually like focus it on what's going on, because you know, human brains are like, oh shit, something's moving, I better find out what it is. Oh, that's not important, what did I just miss, crap. And of course it's only 15 seconds, so you can watch it again, and that's how they get their like their views, or their pagination, or whatever they want to call it, or however they allocate their resources. It's really crazy. It's not real content though. Like, what's the idea that's being expressed? What's being communicated? Hey, look at this cool thing that I found. I mean,
Well,
hold on. Let me find anything on my desk. Look at this cool thing I found. It's called Power Tool Know-How. Saves you money. Radial saw, bandsaw, drill press, wood lathe. Sears Craftsman. Over 600 professional operations described and illustrated. Like, I mean, I guess to somebody that might be interesting, if they were to see me holding this book and flipping through it and showing my face in awe of how, you know, simple some of these illustrations really are, and how effective they are at communicating what and these tools are for, and how they're to be used. Maybe I should do something. I don't want to read a book on YouTube. That's like the dumbest thing.
well, and one of the things you nailed on is like it really lowers the level of what qualifies as content in the same way Duchamp turning a toilet upside down lowers the bar to what qualifies as art. And I've like always hated him my entire life. Even worse now in that between him and Warhol, we have the result of like the bar being lowered for what qualifies someone to become famous, something to be called art or called content, and it's these bar lowering assholes like fucking Jackson Pollock who are CIA plants and shit like that. Where now we know, yeah, Jackson Pollock was a fucking plant, and like I don't know if that has caught up with all of the I don't know if it'll ever catch up with all of the damage that has been done with the way modern art is meant to undermine abstract representation, and the way that was done with like CIA at the helm of it. And those are things that used to be like conspiracy theory, and now that we know that they're true, it's I think that's why those artists that are still being planted in different genres aren't as successful anymore. And so did you ever see Exit Through the Gift Shop?
Yeah.
So I thought that was like a fantastic representation of how the machine takes something that's meant to like undermine it and turn it against the counterculture movement. And like when Banksy tried to destroy a piece during a
And
exhaustion,
they only
it
got like
like
a quarter of the way through.
right, and then it like increased the value because of the accidental non-destruction. And it's like, oh my god. So did you see the Watch the Party Die track? Like when Kendrick released it, they had a picture of black Air Forces like as the thumbnail picture for the song. And it happened to be not happened to be. It was a listing off of eBay that where the image came from originally. So then the people who had listed and sold the shoes they retracted the original sale, which could have been Kendrick in the first place, which is hilarious that they tried to retract the sale. And then now they tried to sell the shoes for like starting at $5,000 auction. They had to take the listing down because they got cyberbullied, air quote, which is basically them just being called out for being fucking vultures because they didn't know who Kendrick Lamar was in the first place. So these people are trying to exploit their 15 fucking minutes of fame and turn these dirty ass, old ass, creased ass shoes into something that they're not. And in the process, it's like, it feels almost as if Kendrick is baiting capitalism to try to exploit him the way it normally exploits things. And in the process, it exposes its exploitation practices. And once it does that, the people who it usually exploits can no longer really fall for it because it's like, oh, we see what you did. Like, you saw this moment where you thought you could turn around and sell these shoes that you were just about to take $70, which is way more than those shoes were worth because they were fucking used. They weren't new.
For anybody who wants to know what the shoes look like, search for Watch the Party Die and then select the Images tab. And the first 4 images are excellent representations of what we were talking about. These are worn shoes that have seen some miles.
Yeah, they're not worth what they were about to get $70 for them.
That's way too much.
Because that's way too much for those shoes.
These aren't special shoes.
It's funny. The only reason those shoes ever got value in those people's mind is because some people decided to backtrace the original image and found out that it was an eBay listing and the shit was already sold, which is where I'm like, it could have been fucking Kendrick who bought them before he released the song, thinking that those people were going to follow through and also thinking they might go ahead and retract it and try to do this. Like, there's all these kinds of things that could have played out and how that went down. But the fact that he used a random image off of fucking eBay and then the people who didn't know who the fuck he was tried to come back and capitalize on it because their kids told them what happened. It's like, it's funny how fast things move now. Information moves really fast. So the people who they thought that they were going to exploit by selling those shoes ended up turning on them really quickly because they weren't about to get scammed. Like, do you remember when Angry Birds came out and then they took it off the market and then people were trying to sell iPads loaded with Angry Birds for $100,000?
Oh yeah, there have been a few games that's happened with. There was like an early platformer that was very eerily similar to Mario, where you just had to run and jump through stuff. That got taken off.
Well, they were scams.
Well, of course, but
the media was going along with it though. That's the issue: is the media accelerating these scams is not something that they can do any longer because they were complicit when that shit was happening with Angry Birds. Like I know which platform you're talking about too. It was like Tomb Runner or something. Oh man.
Uh, it's like Flappy Birds or something like that.
Yeah, Flappy Bird's got I think taken off too.
Flappy
Uh,
Bird, that's what it was. That was the one that had the pipes from Mario, and the background sky was from Mario, and all of
yeah.
the general style language was Mario. Um, I remember people selling or people trying to sell those phones for like inordinate amounts of money, like way beyond. And it's like one of those like, what's the draw? Who in their right mind thinks that this is like a good idea? Let's say that the phone was $1,000 when it was new, and they're selling it with this game because it's still on there. They can't use the phone though. Like, sure, they can play this little game until what their brain melts because that's all it's really good for. Let's run this dot through an endless maze. It's incredible what people will pay for.
Well, and on that note, there's this video, well, multiple videos now of this streamer air quote named Jack Doherty or Doherty. I don't know how to pronounce it. He's crashing his fucking McLaren while he's on his phone. And the funniest part,
Oh, these are kids.
oh yeah, I don't know how. I mean, I know how, but in this modern age, this fucking dumbass kid is able to buy a McLaren, crash the McLaren, record himself, not get arrested on the spot, and basically have to have people. People are going to lose their minds until this dude gets arrested because he's totally gonna get. He's definitely getting arrested for this shit, and it's a matter of if the dude who is in his car sues him, like this is not going to end well for this fucking dumbass kid in terms of this. To me is where the idea that just because somebody has money that they should be able to get this supercar and not have to take any sort of test, not have to take any sort of classes, and then you get this dude, it's like sleeting and he's on his phone in a fucking supercar.
That $300,000 supercar, borderline hypercar.
Yeah, and he doesn't know how to drive it. It wasn't even going that fast when he crashed it.
It doesn't
So
matter in
to
a car
me-
like that. If you like breathe on a steering wheel or take your foot off the gas too
Right.
fast, the torque from the engine will cause the rear end to jump. Like it blows my mind.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
This isn't the kind of thing
That
that
shit,
they just
dog.
explain to people. These are things that you have to learn apparently. Holy
That
crap.
shit happens on a fucking Jaguar fucking 8-cylinder. So I can only imagine how much it happens on
The
a goddamn
freaking-
supercar.
Holy
Because this is one of those things that you have to learn.
yeah,
You can only really learn it by having your hands on the thing and then being like, oh, okay, this, if I even like remotely push too much on it, the rear end is gonna fucking swing out. Like probably to the left, most likely to the left, no matter what I do. A lot of them just like automatically swing to the left because of how it's weighted. So it's like it's not gonna swing out to the right. It's gonna most often, like I said, it's just gonna swing to the left. And if you're not prepared for that, you're gonna overcorrect, which he did, and then he overcorrected in the wrong direction. So there's all these things where you can see it in the video because this dumbass is recording himself crashing this fucking car and risking his life, his friends, air quote friends' life, and everybody on the highway with them's life. And then
his passenger, the picture of his passenger's face is like
oh yeah, dude's
spattered in
fucked.
blood. He's got a like 1,000-yard stare there. He has a concussion.
Oh yeah,
that
I
guy
think
is
he's
fucked up.
reconsidering his life decisions because he's like, this dude is not my friend. He just was on his phone.
Almost killed him.
Yeah, this is like that dude realized he's not immortal. And there's usually a point in people's lives when they get something like this. It don't have to be this extreme, but then they learn, oh shit, I'm not immortal. I can break bones. Like, because that dude in the passenger seat, he's probably never broken a bone, never gotten punched in the face, never had a gun pulled on him, never gotten in a serious car wreck where the car flipped and he wasn't wearing his seatbelt or something, where he never actually had his life flash before his eyes. But if you watch that video where the fucking everything goes white because there's smoke, that motherfucker thought he was dead briefly. I know both of them thought they were dead briefly, and then once they realized they weren't, it was like one of these things where they realized, oh shit, we were recording. We just did a bunch of illegal. So they're scrambling. Like you said, one dude has a 1,000-yard stare, and he's fucking reconsidering all of his life decisions, thinking about like, oh my God, all these people who I'm friends with have been putting my life in danger in various ways because of this one experience. Now you can see that change this dude's life where, like I said, he might end up suing this fucking dumbass who was driving because he was the one recording. So I guess they were both recording, but the way he's like holding his wrist, it's like he definitely has a broken wrist. It didn't look like the airbag deployed on the right passenger side. So like this may be a used McLaren that had been in a wreck before that did not. So what I've been finding out through a lot of these things is like they'll put fake because the oh my God, the airbags in these things explicitly are so it looks like the driver's side when deployed, but the passenger one didn't. So I imagine this probably has been in a wreck before. This dude probably bought a used McLaren. They probably put oh no, I guess it did deploy. But it's like the fact that the dude's fucking wrist is hurt is like the speed that they were going was enough to probably break his wrist. So he may have got a concussion too. His head was bleeding, which is why I didn't think that the airbag had deployed. But it's like you can see
witnesses rescued the content creator and his friend in the car while they continued filming with Doherty.
Like a bunch of
saying,
idiots.
My fucking car, holy shit, no.
Not as he asked how his friend was once, but he was definitely more concerned with his car. So like his reaction, that's the type of reaction that makes somebody sue you.
The material, the fog inside the car is actually the propellant that inflates the airbags. It's a fire retardant that also starts to evacuate the bags once someone hits it, so that it suppresses anything from starting inside the vehicle. So that might have actually been what it was supposed to. But I bet the dude, because he was like I bet he wasn't sitting in the right direction. I bet he was not sitting like back in the cup of the bucket seat. I bet that's what put his head right next to the window.
I mean, it's violent anytime they go off. So
of course.
Like, it can definitely give you like a bloody nose or even potentially break your nose.
Sure.
But he's got like blood running down from the top of his head.
I think he might have hit the A-pillar.
Yeah, so that's where I'm like, it looks almost like you said, it looks like his head hit the fucking pillar. And if that's the case, the speed that they were going, and like if he hit the pillar and then the airbag bounced him off the pillar again,
like into the window.
Oh my God, bro. He's definitely going to have some concussion, if not like a skull fracture. And the fact that he got it all on video and it's 100% the driver's fault, like, and the fact that he was on the phone, multiple people are gonna have cases for lawsuits. Anybody who was on the highway with that dude can come in and be like, "Oh yeah, I had to brake hard and now I have whiplash," and fucking because the same way those fucking Air Force One people tried to exploit that shit. Information travels so fast. Anybody who was on the highway within a mile of this is probably going to be like, oh yeah, whiplash, and try to sue this dude. And dude, this may be a class action lawsuit that like ends streamers because of
he gassed it to go around a truck that was merging.
While he was not looking at the road.
He wasn't paying attention.
He was looking at his phone.
Yeah, he looked up. He gave it the gas to go around a truck that was merging. He lost control around the vehicle right afterwards. I don't think he
signaled either.
I couldn't tell. I was just watching this video, but he definitely.
I watched the video, but I don't remember him signaling.
Yeah, I didn't notice that
because
what? His left hand is on the wheel,
and his right hand's on the phone. So
right,
there's
he's
like
looking down.
Yeah, he's not signaling.
A white pickup that's merging, and then he gasses it because he's going fast. And
he's recording himself his friends recording him doing all these fucking like breaking the law multiple times before the crash.
Oh man! So I bet he gassed it, put it into a slightly a shorter gear, got it going fast, took his foot off the gas because he thought, oh yeah, this thing will be fine, and then like the gears kind of bound up, and then because it dumps all that torque into the rear wheels, and then boom, wheels go spinning, that thing goes into the side.
It was wet. I mean, it was
raining.
It's
raining. Florida's about to experience Hurricane Milton. Like, This is pre-hurricane rain. Dude's driving a $300,000 super exotic vehicle into a fucking guardrail. You've told me before that I think rationally, and I don't understand what's going on here because these are decisions that are being made by irrational people. Like, clearly, who in their right mind thinks that it's a good idea to give a freaking child a freaking McLaren? Those parents need to be scolded like by their parents because apparently they didn't get the fucking memo. Oh my goodness.
So he got banned from Kick. Yeah.
Oh,
so the repercussion, he hasn't gone to jail yet, but this is only within the last 24 hours.
And his revenue stream is gone now.
Yep. One of his main revenue streams is gone. Boom. Gone. So he ain't going to be able to afford fucking fixing that McLaren if he ain't going to be able to keep streaming about this shit. Well, 11,000 people watching live. We all saw you being on the phone while driving. You nearly killed yourself and your friend, one viewer said. Like, because I can only imagine if you're like a kid, that shit had to be traumatic as fuck. Just imagine how many people are then going to sue him for emotional damage too, because they were like just watching, and then somebody just basically almost killed a bunch of people on accident because they were being fucking negligent.
Fast ass cars like that belong on tracks.
Right. Yeah. And that's where I'm like, there's a negligence that we know goes with selling something to somebody who shouldn't own something, which is why in many states, if you sell alcohol to someone at a bar and then they go and drive after you sold them alcohol and they get into an accident, some states can hold the bartender liable too, in addition to the person who was driving the car. So we know that when you sell somebody some shit and then they go do something with that thing, there are chains of responsibility where it's like, yeah, that person wouldn't have been able to go out and fucking crash this way if somebody hadn't sold them a fucking McLaren. So then it's like, are we going to start holding these people responsible for selling McLarens to children? Because it's like, that motherfucker couldn't rent a car. I'm looking at him like, he probably couldn't rent a car, but he can buy a McLaren? How? Because I remember when I would try to rent a car when I was under 24, and they wouldn't rent it to me. And I'd be like, oh, I guess I got to figure something else out. But this motherfucker can go buy a McLaren? And that's what I'm like, he may be over 24 and
he's 20.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I figured because he looks like he can't grow a beard to save his life. You can't buy a beard. You can buy a McLaren, but you can't buy a beard. You can go to Turkey and get those implants, but it's gonna be fucking obvious.
Oh.
we'll, we'll we'll clock that shit. We'll know it's a bought beard. We'll know it's a bought hairline. That's why nobody like the Turkish are the best at doing it, but you still know because that motherfucker is like the hair don't. It's like, oh, it looks like back hair. It has the texture of back hair or like armpit hair or some shit where you're like, that's a little thicker than the other shit on the side of your head. But people who don't know wouldn't know. But that's where again it's like the best on the planet. Like you can still tell by the texture. Like because you can't sometimes they'll take from the back of the head, but if the person doesn't have enough hair in the back of the head, they can't take it from there. So it's like then they have to start taking it from their back or like other places. And so it's like the textures don't match. And that's why again it's like the best fucking surgeons in the world only can do the best with what they can work with. And it's like if you don't have enough fucking follicles on the back of your head, they got like and the motherfuckers are gonna pay them to do it, so they're gonna do it. And so that's where I'm like, again, you see these people. How can this dude buy a McLaren at all? But that's where again, if people start getting held responsible for selling these things the same way bartenders get held responsible when drunk driving shit happens. That shit'll change. It'll change. And that's where I'm like, I think the way that his own audience has turned on him and is like, this dude needs to go to jail. Like nobody is like, this is cool. Everybody's like, this is fucking stupid, including the kids who are watching. So when it's that bad, I don't think it's gonna keep happening in terms of.
So I just did a Google News search for crashes supercar, and Jack is the first two. But then somebody in the Bay Area crashed a rare $1 million Porsche back in May, and then
Some kid.
Then after I'm not looking deeper. I'm just looking at the headlines, I guess. Then there was a racing event at a Texas racing event, like at a speedway, and then a electric hypercar crashed at Goodwood, which is a racetrack, and then a Ferrari got into a accident on the Autobahn, and then a Hennessy Venom was crashed during a test run at a racetrack. Then McLaren was crashed into a Lexus dealership after doing donuts.
Jesus, something you could do in a fucking Ford Escort. Just do that in a fucking Ford Escort, man. If you're just gonna do donuts, why you gotta take in a goddamn McLaren to do donuts?
Oh my God. No, get a Fiat, something that's not gonna hurt anything else, something that's gonna actually fall apart and break into pieces when it hits something. You could
do that in like I said, like get a '92 Ford Escort.
It would be cheaper to get one of those Fisher Price like Tyke My First Cars and put an electric motor in it and then drive that into things. And it would be safer too. It would be cheaper, safer. It would actually probably be a lot of fun if it could be reinforced and, oversized for an adult. I mean, that's actually kind of what a smart car is. Still, actually, you know what? I've seen some videos of some smart cars just eating up like built vehicles at drag strips until they run out of gear. Until they run out of gear, like they only go like 80 miles an hour, and then and only then does the built car like break that speed and zoom by it. But it's almost always at the end of the quarter mile, and so it's just really funny.
Yeah, there's a 1,500 horsepower smart car.
Yeah, it does wheelies. It does a wheelie for the first half of the racetrack before its front end touches the ground, and then it still goes like full tilt. At this point, I'm not surprised. It's more like I wonder how many batteries they've gone through.
Jesus Christ! Things like throws fire.
What kind of cooling system do they have to have on the batteries in the pit area so they can keep those things from like catching on fire between runs?
I doubt they do. I bet they're just like
Swapping them out.
they're like riding around in fucking thermo suits. Like, yeah, I'm on.
Well, I know that smart cars, the whole like motor battery assembly is like this. It's this like a cross member undercarriage thing that just bolts in. So I'm pretty sure those things can actually be changed really easily. They're not like the skateboard model that most car manufacturers have gone with.
Yeah, they basically just have a jet engine in the taking up the fucking entire interior of the vehicle. That shit is insane, man. That's like I've seen RC cars that are almost that big. Well, and that's where I can understand if you're gonna take it out on the track, but if you're gonna do all that shit and then take it out on the regular road and then try to act like you're doing the shit on the track, it's so stupid. It's so dumb. It's so irredeemably stupid because that's where you can get track insurance.
Yeah.
You can totally get track insurance, but you can't get insured. And isn't beyond that, like
I bet modern cars.
So much.
I bet modern cars nowadays, because they record every action, every throttle position, every steering angle, every braking angle, everything. They record all that stuff. I bet that they have thresholds that once those thresholds are crossed, it voids warranties.
Right.
You know, and they can do that with sensors. They're like, oh, this person was driving too hard. Sorry, we're not going to warranty the suspension component.
For sure. And even then, it's like the way, you know, knowing how what is meant to qualify as street legal, and then people push the extremes on both ends of they'll drive cars that are barely functional and are about to fall apart. The brakes don't work. The fucking shocks are about to fall apart. And that's like the other end of the spectrum of pushing street legal versus the other end where you're like putting suspension parts and fucking engine parts that are for racetracks and not for streets. And so then you get people who don't understand that once your tires spin at a certain revolution, you have to heat them up before they get traction. And so it's like you'll have people pushing race car speeds, not having understood the things you have to do to get a race car to work correctly. And then you'd be like, damn, they're driving a fucking F1 car on the highway and then wondering why the fucking back end just fishes out. And so, no, again, the idea that these people can get these cars and not have to know how they work and not have to understand the physics behind making them work optimally, and then can just take them out. And
oh, the McLaren Senna that crashed into the Lexus dealership was being operated by a YouTuber.
I'm sensing a trend here.
Oh, it was a $1.3 million car when new, and he bought it used for $150,000.
And see, that's what the kind of that's kind of the what I assumed happened with this guy is like some YouTuber probably had it before, they crashed it, got it rebuilt, and then sold it or something like that, where it's like if you don't total it, you can, you know, put it back on the market, and some fucking dumb young kid will be like, oh, $150,000 McLaren, isn't this supposed to be $1 million? This is a great deal. Not realizing it's been fucking rebuilt. They don't even care. And so it's people like that who get on the road with these sometimes rebuilt machines that have some major flaw in them because some dumb kid fucked it up and then thought it would be a good idea to put it back on the market. And that, that happens on all scales, but like I'm seeing it happen with the YouTubers because a lot of them are just documenting
See, this
it.
thing has paginated about 6 times now, and it's just like an endless stream of stuff that's all happened in this within 2024. And it's McLarens and Porsches and Ferraris and Lamborghinis and a lot of McLarens. A lot. They're almost all McLarens. I'm serious. It's really weird.
And I bet, yeah. Well, and I bet the only reason Maseratis aren't on there is because used Maseratis don't go for as much, and the young people buying them up has like lowered their fucking stance. Like people don't consider those in the same class anymore because a bunch of dumbass kids bought Maseratis.
Uh, Ooh, a Ferrari and a Lamborghini crashed into a camper on the road. There was probably like an entire whole ass family inside that camper.
Mm.
This image that I'm looking at, the camper is like, perpendicular to the road's orientation, and it's rolling down the road.
I bet they got paid though.
Oh, I hope so, because man, these are the kind of things that I don't even want to look inside like beyond the headline and thumbnail though. Supercar transporter. Oh, here's one that had here's one I'm definitely going to look inside because it looks like there are at least 3, potentially more. 9 supercars on its side, and the actual car hauler trailer thing is folded in half.
Jesus.
Cars everywhere, upside down on the ground. I'm serious.
Oh my god! I bet that guy got like fired and then sued into oblivion.
Oh man.
Or whoever caused that accident. Cause yeah, then you'll see what's even worse is when some idiot will allow a YouTuber to test drive a car. And there's all these videos of YouTubers test driving and fucking crashing cars. Like someone decided to put a Tesla on Plaid in the fucking lot and see what would happen if they put it all the way down, put the throttle all the way down, and fucking sure enough, they hit a bunch of goddamn cars. And I'm like, how many times is this gonna happen before again? I feel like this Jack Doherty dude might be the one of the beginnings of the end where people have seen it too much. And once you start to get like the novelty's worn off, so you never felt bad for them, but now you're like, oh, this dude's just a menace and he just burn up
So the company
that much money.
That is dealing with that McLaren Senna that crashed into the Lexus dealership, I'm assuming it's the Lexus dealership, is still trying to sell it to a YouTuber to do a video about. That was back at the end of April when the crash happened, and now they're looking for someone to do a video about it. That's just like, if that's not capitalism in full effect. Here's a wrecked car that'll never drive again, that can't be repaired. Somebody do a video about it.
Well, it's funny on that note. This guy bought a Fisker for like $100 or something. And he's been trying to like fix it up as his YouTube content. And it's like, it's amazing because he'll call around asking for help. And the people who are like the last line of Fisker repair people are like, dude, that thing is like death trap. Don't drive it. Like, you shouldn't be doing this. Like, don't repair it and drive it. Just you're gonna die. And it's like not in those words, but that's what you can tell that they're trying to tell him and like push him away from this project. And sure enough, every time he gets close to like having a functioning car, something else goes completely wrong. And then you're like, whoa, no wonder this company couldn't fucking keep it together. Because if this is happening, I mean, he, the cars that, the reason he got it for $100 is because anybody who was a dealership who had a Fisker basically had a bunch of bricks once Fisker went out of business. So
yeah, no, I've read about that. Fisker's sales were so poor and vehicles sat in the lot for so long that their batteries drained down to a point where they could not be resuscitated by any means developed by Fisker's battery technology division. And so they like, how do you reinitialize a battery that nobody knows how to reinitialize?
This guy did it. I forget exactly how.
That's actually very impressive, but still, like,
I don't know if they don't know how to do it so much as
it's
probably so cost intensive, and it doesn't have a reliable enough rate to do it to all the cars that they were just like, yeah, we can't do it.
Yeah,
I mean, not being able to do it at scale is the equivalent of not being able to do it at all for that type of company. So,
oh yeah, if a really advanced DIY EV specialist has figured out how to do it, that's one person, and they're an absolute outlier in this scenario. Like, I don't think anyone who doesn't have some kind of background in electrical engineering has any business trying to develop a regulator for an out of production dead company's electric vehicle with, you know, what's essentially ancient battery technology now, because nobody knows how to service it. It might as well be from like a previous era of batteries at this point, because there are no tools. There are no cells to replace. It's, you know, everything, it's extinct, and everything is just a fossil at this point. I think Fisker is one of those, like, you know, real deal fears coming into reality, that the battery technology will be unsupported or the car won't be supported. Those cars aren't that old. They're already just dunzo. Drive at your own risk.
Yeah. And on that note, that's where, you know, he was able to get it back going, but it has so many problems that it's like every other video of his is like, was driving and this went wrong and this went wrong. But it just seemed like they had so many production problems. But I'm also, you know, the idea that car companies are supposed to put out new models every year, and even if they're staying within the same model, that they'll put out a different version every year.
That's ludicrous.
It is.
That expectation is so unrealistic. This is what we get when we've built a culture of regular updates and expecting everything to be fixed with software all the time. And, oh, I can get a new phone anytime I damn well please. And it's the next iteration of technology, even though it's only like a marginal increase in actual capability. And not even marginal. Sometimes it's like the addition of a technology that's not going to be used to its potential at all. AI.
Oh my god.
I saw this really fun image of Gandalf laughing, and the caption read, like, when you start seeing fewer AI generated images, and then it shows Gandalf again, but not laughing, and he says, when you start seeing fewer AI generated images. And it reminded me of you know, since the beginning of the year to now, the depth of the uncanny valley has improved so much. Not that like hands and feet and necks are perfect. Some of that stuff is still pretty wackadoodle, but a lot of it's getting a lot better. A lot of the image generation is becoming more realistic and less anime and less 90s superhero proportions. More realistic human proportions. So maybe there is something to be said for the consolidation of talent in certain areas to make the ensure that the development doesn't go into like directly into hentai all the time.
I mean, but that's exactly where it's going, which
I
is
know,
why
but
it's like
it's just they're making hentai out of more realistic looking characters is what I'm getting at.
So, have you heard of the Door Brothers?
No, I'm gonna
They are legitimately the only people who've done anything useful with AI in terms of like production.
the Door Brothers.
And you can tell that it's their creativity and they could do this without AI. It would just be like
It would take
just
longer.
take longer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm like the shit they do, it's like Dave Letterman jokes on mescaline, and like that's the only way I could describe them. But it's like some of their stuff is not good, and it's because AI generated shit isn't good. But it's like when they're in their element, it's fucking hilarious. But it's because of like the AI is like a really an arbitrary tool. So in my mind, like I'd rather see what they can do without AI and with other like methods, because it's like not an inordinate use of electricity and energy for something that could be done with way less energy and electricity. So I think that's why to me it's like I'm not about to look at the Door Brothers and act like their shit isn't fucking hilarious. But at the same time, I wish they wouldn't. I wish they'd do it without AI. So it's like at the same, they with all of the AI content that has been produced, that is the only original AI content that is like in terms and it's not even really original in the sense of like
Well, they've
the
got
music.
a really refined style prompt on their images, like a super refined style prompt
Right.
because there's so much continuity within each of the studies that like it's very clear that they were spent a lot of time refining, like a
Well,
whole
but
fucking ton of time.
the one of the best ones that you can tell that they ended up with is like the iguana on Mark Zuckerberg's shoulder. Like the every time Mark Zuckerberg shows up with an iguana on his shoulder, it like gets funnier and funnier in the sense of like it's like the the iguana totally seems like it's ratatouilleing Zuckerberg, and like that idea is just fucking hilarious on its own. But to see it play out in multiple different videos, it's like I said, it's like a Letterman joke on mescaline at that point.
Yeah,
But they could have done that shit with a team, or they could have done it eventually if they knew how to animate and use fucking Premiere Pro or Illustrator or whatever tools it took them or it would take them to be able to do that. Because yeah, it could definitely be done without AI, but like
it would take some I guess some manual motion capture, point discretion.
I mean, and some people could do it with like
Could do it in After Effects.
fucking with prosthetics or like practical,
Yeah.
like somebody could actually just put an iguana on their shoulder and act it out and fucking wear Zuckerberg, a green a green mask where they CGI fucking Zuckerberg's face on, and like, yeah, there's a ton of ways to do it. Like, and that's the beauty of innovating methods of
I
creation.
have seen some of these guys' works. The Cheeto Mussolini holding up the convenience store.
Yes, that's them. That's the Door Brothers.
Yeah,
They did a series of those.
Yeah.
That like, and like Biden's always in a wheelchair. It's like Biden in a wheelchair with a Mac 10 holding up a fucking convenience store. Like fucking like Putin walks in with like a gold-plated AK-47, and like Elon has like a flamethrower. And so the fact that they make fun of everybody is why I'm like, oh, this is hilarious. They're not like, they may be Russian plants, they may be like propagandists, but they're making fun of everybody, including fucking Putin. So like, I can't not laugh at
one
this
of the
shit.
princes
Fucking
was
hilarious.
escorting one of the people in cuffs. Oh, here's Elon.
And that's what I mean. Like, the more of them you watch with that, because they use the same
iguana.
sequence, and
There's
that's the
iguana.
Letterman.
What the hell?
That's the Letterman aspect of it, where it's like, because they're also shorts, and like, you can't.
He's got a gold AK without a magazine in it. Obama's got a kitchen knife. What the hell? Oh yeah.
Or like,
this is longer than the one that I saw. This has a bunch of people that I didn't realize were.
Yeah, I mean, and then they got one where like Dr. Fauci shows up at somebody's door with like a needle, and he's like looking through the peephole, and like Hillary's holding a bunch of files in a safe. It's like they take what American media hyper focuses on, and then they satirize it in a way where it doesn't feel like they have any political leaning, except like, look at this circus, because it's also, it definitely feels like it's mocking the American, I mean, not just American, but like the global political circus, when it includes Putin too, because it's like, I think Kim Jong-un's in there at some point, like, in one of the videos, like they don't hold back on anybody, but like, the fact that
these things can be found at thedoorbrothers.com. DOR is how you spell door.
But then the fact that they do shit like put Biden in the wheelchair every video is like,
hey man, the Pope is dual wielding.
Yeah, like they have the Pope in there.
She has a hammer and a sickle, and his room is full of Pooh Bears.
Then they get the Pope carrying it, because then dumbass people on Facebook start to believe that it's real. So somebody took a still of the Pope being led away in handcuffs from that video and was like circulating some shit that the Pope got arrested. And like I said, dumbass people on Facebook thought it was real, and so then they had to run a story like, Pope did not get arrested.
Oh my God.
But it was also in like a fucking bubble jacket or something. So he's like dressed like he's on the streets of New York, like hanging out with fucking Jay-Z at a club. Like, I think my edible kicked in. Yeah. But that shit is still hilarious, which is where, again, like, I'd be an asshole if I was sitting here trying to be like, Door Brothers aren't funny. But the issue is not the AI. It's the fucking Door Brothers that are funny. It's like I said, I
Yeah,
feel
no.
like
The presentation of the content is one thing, but the actual content is what is actually important. Like they're putting together series of compositions that elicit a response, and in this case, I find it very entertaining. Like watching Cheeto dressed up as Superman defending cats. Here's a five-legged cat. Here's a cat with two tails. Like miniature Noah's Ark, cat with two tails. Uh, they're really good. These guys are very creative, and they're willing to spend the time to sit there and refine the output of AI. That's not easy. You still have to watch this stuff. You still have to look at it. You still have to look at it with a critical eye. It's not like AI anything generation can just be like press go and then publish. That's how we end up with really really screwed up imagery or content in the case of video. Let's see how all of this has affected my YouTube. Huh, nothing new. Interesting. It was the videos were definitely hosted by YouTube, but they didn't appear in my watch history.
well, and it's funny because I don't even know if those videos have like really blown up
I'm not
so
sure if
much
those
as like
videos are actually hosted on by YouTube, or if they're made to look like they're hosted on YouTube.
I think they're hosted on like TikTok or something. Originally from the because like or maybe even just the Door Brothers page because like
Yeah, I think it's an aesthetic to look like YouTube.
the funny that's why to me the only parts that have blown up have been the clips that people thought were real taken out of context which is like
That's just delicious. That's like the sweetest, most fantastic kind of outcome. Like the Onion strives to create like satire that people take seriously. These guys managed to make something that people thought was actually real.
yeah well because like to me it was like I was frustrated at first because I was like god damn it somebody did something useful with AI and it was like because I was like, not to say that I don't, it's not that I get like angry that somebody does useful. It's more so like anytime somebody does something that is remotely going to be able to be used as like an example as to why everybody else should be able to keep failing, it's like an extension of this AI hype period. And it's like, I'm trying to think. I can't even remember the last time, like, and I don't even really know if people are onto the Door Brothers for what they are because they're more directors and producers in terms of like I'm sure they have if they have animation skills or something that's like other skills too but they're like at the highest level they're producing and directing at the least um so AI can't produce or direct. So that's where there's a human element that comes in that if you don't understand how direction works or how production works, like you can see executive producer and producer and not know what either of those people does because in every production, a lot of cases it's different. Like a producer isn't going to do even the same producer isn't necessarily going to do the same thing between productions. So going to production school and how it's something that is very case by case basis from the perspective of producers. Somebody who doesn't know how to produce is going to look at a producer even more abstract and less relevant because they can't pin down what they do. So like the Door Brothers aren't even going to really like people are going to think AI did that and not the Door Brothers' creativity. And that's what frustrated me about it more than anything is like the Door Brothers could do that shit with anything, but AI is a tool that maybe it's allowing them to do it faster. But if they did it slower, it would look better.
They
But
still
if they
had to
did it
iterate
slower-
through anywhere from 50 to 100 times just to get one of
Right,
those images.
for
At
sure.
least, maybe 200
sure.
to 300 or 400 times. They had to look critically at every single one of those images.
And even then, they don't look that, like, if you start to look too critically, they don't look that good. Like,
no, they start to look like AI.
and so that's where the beauty is that they knew that you can't have the images stay up too long or else you start to get too critical. So that's a production choice. That's a direction choice. Because if they would have left the shit on too long, then you would start hyper focusing on the missing magazine on the AK-47 or the shift from a shotgun to an AK-47 inconsistency between shots. You don't get time to do that because they're moving through the shots fast enough. And if you play it with the music on, like, then you're not even really focusing on those things. So there's a lot of choices that they made that overcome the gaps of AI that people who don't understand production would then credit to AI. And that's what frustrated me about it more than anything. But then seeing their attempt to do other shit, it's like, I don't think they're gonna actually be popular because the like Snoop Dogg video that they made, it's good, but it's not good enough. And it doesn't cross the uncanny valley. And I think the issue is you can cross the uncanny valley in like hops, but you can't do it in a fucking marathon. You can't do it in a 100-meter race, or they can't do it right now. So it's like, yeah, you can do a 3-second uncanny valley cross, but that's about it as of right now. And I don't like.
Oh yeah, the only way to get really serious depth and detail into the uncanny valley is with a static image, something that isn't moving, that's been highly refined and potentially, like, paint edited in some way. Like, they paint the section that they want the AI to correct, and then they'll reiterate through that section until it's correct. Or they might use like some kind of image to derive the tokens that they use to fix that portion of an image. It's not like a process that's intuitive either. Like, I remember some of the images I've created. I would start with simple, less than 75 tokens, and next thing I know, I'm running like over 200 tokens plus my style prompt, and so it's like, it's not for the faint of heart. You gotta like invest hours into 1 or 2 or 3 images sometimes. And it's not unlike having a mining computer where it's like running at full tilt the whole time, which was kind of surreal, because I can accept when a machine has like 5 or so GPUs or 3 or 4 GPUs and is just, the fans are all spinning and it's loud as can be and it's in its own damn room, because you don't want to sit in that room with one computer, let alone like multiple computers that are all doing that. But then just to have a workstation with 1 GPU and it sounds like it's trying to take off for hours, because running big batches till the machine starts to hallucinate is actually kind of where some of the cool stuff happens. But then there's all the editing that has to happen afterwards and the curation that has to happen afterwards. And well over 95% of the images that are generated are absolute crap, and just delete. No need to keep them. There's something wrong with them. Actually, that's kind of the reason that whenever I read any comments about how people think that generating images with AI is easy, it's one of those, like, I know that they don't know what they're talking about, because people who understand how this stuff actually works, they know that it's a long ass process that requires a lot of effort. And I think that's the real problem, is that the AI is supposed to be able to bridge the talent and skill gap. It allows anyone to write at the level of an undergrad getting a B- in an MBA in a business program. That's not a dig at people who write at that level. That's fine. That's a perfectly good writing level. But it can't overcome the culturing of creativity. It just can't. You can't take somebody who doesn't know how to think differently and give them a tool and say, here, use this tool that you have to think differently to use properly.
Well, on that note, it's like you have to have the proper lexicon to be able to generate the proper answer for the proper question. Um, and it's like because artificial intelligence doesn't actually understand English and it doesn't actually understand words.
Yeah.
If the question is not phrased correctly, it's not going to register.
Yeah.
So it's like you really have to kind of know what you're talking about already before you can get anything useful out of AI. So that right there.
And the novelty of AI gibberish only lasts for like a few minutes. And then it's kind of like I don't want to talk to a drunk robot. I don't actually want to talk to a robot at all. Like I think that's the other problem. It's not like a substitute for interaction. It's not another brain that you can bounce ideas off of.
Yeah, and a lot of people are failing the reverse Turing.
It's like
I guess it's the Turing test in that they are anthropomorphizing it
it's like
when it's not asking to be anthropomorphized.
it's a four-dimensional abacus. It's not a brain. It doesn't have personality. I wonder how many people are looking at these AIs and mistaking um, the AI for like what they're projecting onto it. They think it's the AI. Still, they don't even realize that it's only like a reflection of what the input is.
Yep.
And even as the models get bigger and like they get to like the 20 billion token point or whatever, like they still all flatline at the same level of efficiency. Like there's no amount of money or electricity or GPUs that are going to make it somehow more efficient. They all run out of steam at a point and start hallucinating. It's crazy to me to think that like or to read about how like Microsoft built a unbelievably powerful like hundreds of GPU system to run their AI and they can't break that threshold. No, cuz no one can. OpenAI can't, but they think that spending $7 trillion is going to somehow solve that problem. And I'm pretty sure that that $7 trillion figure is only for data farms and GPU or chip fab, and not including the monumental energy requirement and the impact on surrounding environment, the amount of water they're going to need. I think it's the kind of thing that's going to essentially seal the deal. Like if we want AI, we're going to have to come up with some serious electrical needs, and I'm pretty sure that that's just going to like cascade into like everyone adopting electric vehicles sooner, which means we're going to need even more electrical generation.
Right. The what he was asking in terms of how much they would have to increase electrical output is beyond multiple states capacity or multiple states needs.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's where when he was saying that, they're asking for multiple states worth of electricity and they're only going to generate tens of thousands of jobs instead of millions. That's when even the government is like, okay, those numbers don't really add up.
Yeah.
Like you can't convince us unless you start saying millions of numbers. Better off tens of millions of jobs, but if you're only going to generate tens of thousands at best, and that's what you're saying, that's obviously when the Taiwanese government laughed at them
Yeah.
and we're calling them podcast bro. I love that. I love that the Taiwanese people just did not take him seriously at all, but had to go along with it because all these fucking dumbass capitalists have put him on a pedestal and believe for some fucking second that a guy driving a $4 million car doesn't care about money. What kind of idiot would believe? You know what I mean?
Wasn't there a weird campaign where they tried showing him driving around like in an Altima because it's similar to his last name? I'm pretty sure that was a thing for like a couple of weeks, but then they found out that it wasn't his car. It was like one of the
Yeah, because he has a Koenigsegg.
yeah, and it was actually like the car of like someone low in the company. Just they used it as a publicity gimmick. I can only find it. Sam Altman driving an Altima. It looks like Elon was complaining about him driving an Altima or a Koenigsegg. He should be driving a Tesla, apparently.
Wow, this wind is crazy. What the fuck?
Well,
Everything in my apartment is shaking right now.
interesting.
I don't know what wind speed is. 18 miles an hour. Yeah, it makes sense. Because it was like, you know, I'm not like the weather isn't that big of a deal, but the wind that's been happening the last couple days is like it feels as if it's the remnants of Helen or something, whatever, because you know how those storms dissipate, but then the remnants of them keep moving around. Like these winds aren't normal, especially for this time of year. Um, it feels like tornado season almost, like the way the pressure's been changing. Have you been getting storms in Bloomington?
Man, it's just been kind of cool and damp after Helene did its rampage on the side of the mountain. It's just been kind of wet, not rainy, but not hot. Just I guess humid is the best way to describe it. Not punishing though. That's the weird part. It's been relatively comfortable. It has been getting chillier at night, but it's also October. But we've also had tomatoes. We still have tomatoes. We got flower. We still have buds on the tomato plants. Normally, that's like done towards the end of September. And granted, we're only like a week into October, so it's not like that long. But there are still tomatoes happening. So I don't think I know anything about the weather patterns anymore. Other than
They've changed a lot.
yeah,
Right?
here, let's see, like 30 years ago in October, we're a couple of weeks away from getting our first snowfall. In like 1991, so 32 years ago. 32 years ago, there would have been like snow on the ground at the end of October.
Crazy back there too.
Wow, there's some really crazy wind over Lake Superior. Also, a lot of wind activity above Hudson Bay, it looks like. Or in Hudson Bay. 36-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah, that lake effect is real.
I really enjoy pictures of the Upper Peninsula in the middle of winter, like deep in the middle of winter, when they've been plowing out the roads for long enough that the snow builds up like 20 feet up around the roads. I think that stuff's super cool. I wouldn't want to be like, stuck in the middle of a horrible storm in that area, but I would like to drive through one of those like carved out sections of snow road at some point in my life. And that's how I know I'm a little different. My idea of a good time is waiting for the dead of winter to drive up to the Upper Peninsula and drive along some like unidentifiable road inside of a canyon of snow. Snow canyons of the Upper Peninsula.
Well, that's another thing is watching people go on like crawling missions by themselves. Not,
Oh.
it's like, what are you doing, buddy? What are you doing? But you videotaped it, so I'm gonna watch it.
Every off-road park that I've ever been to, they have little like signs at the beginning of every trail. That the trailheads, they have this little sign that'll indicate like the difficulty of the trail, whether or not it's like safe for largely unmodified vehicles, or if you absolutely have to have a lifted modified vehicle with a winch. Like they indicate that information, and when I watch videos of guys taking their off-road vehicles into places like that, and of course they've got backup, like there's always part of me that wonders, I wonder how many times like they've had to do like a really serious trail repair driving like that, because it seems the only people that actually get away with driving hard on off-road vehicles are people that are doing like competition driving, and they've got rock bouncers that are designed to go hard and fast, and somebody's Tacoma or Jeep is probably not designed for those kinds of activities. I mean, they might have built up the suspension and put a bunch of extra stuff in it, but at a certain point, when is it a high performance vehicle and no longer a road vehicle, like a street legal vehicle? At what point is a race car and not just a really expensive sports car? There's got to be some kind of like, I don't want to say common sense because that seems to be like in short supply when it comes to vehicles. Um, there's got to be some kind of upper limit, some kind of like point where we know that it's not safe for certain types of vehicles simply to be on the road. Like hypercars belong on tracks.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's any scenario where somebody should drive their Koenigsegg or their Pagani or even their vintage Dodge Viper on open roads.
Definitely not the Dodge Viper.
Yeah, like I mean, that's why I put that out there, because like that should definitely not be on the road. Those things are insane, and fortunately, they didn't make enough of them that everyone would have grown accustomed to seeing them wrapped around something. So we were all spared that.
Yeah, increasingly, like I said, I'm of the mind. I don't understand how it's because it's not illegal to rent cars to 20 like, people under 24. They just don't do it.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then what's uh, I just can't.
Well, every so often I read about some off-road park closing because people brought vehicles that were actually too heavy to be off-roading, like Hummers, or they were
And ruin
bringing,
the trail.
yeah, they were bringing like or bringing 1-ton trucks or 2-ton trucks deep into the
Mm,
woods in these places that they're really not supposed to be going, and just wrecking the place. And so, that just ruins it for everyone. It's like there's very little thought about like personal responsibility when taking something that absolutely destroys the environment someplace. Like obviously there are places where people want to do this stuff, and sure, it's okay if it's in like designated areas, but not if those designated areas get destroyed in the and I mean like unusable. Like there's a oh, what was there's a place I was reading about in Indiana where they had trails at one point, but then it just became like an open terrain because people just couldn't get up the trails anymore, so they had to go around them. And now it's like, you know, just drive wherever you can kind of situation. That's
mm,
messed up. Might as well just be driving around in a field if that's the case.
right. Well, and I wondered about that because it's like there is the culture of people who want to just buy their way into it, and a lot of those vehicles are super heavy.
It's funny. I was reading about rock crawlers and moon buggies and rock bouncers and all that stuff. And there's a general trend within rock crawlers and moon buggies to get under 2,000 pounds.
Yeah, I figured
That's the
that.
trend. They want to get light because they
Mhm.
they won't go over things, and like they'll do weird stuff like put, you know, 25, 50 pounds of steel shot in the wheel and then add a couple gallons of water so that the tires will stabilize when they're climbing over things. They're also at really low pressure, like 5 or 6 pounds or something stupid. But they'll do all sorts of other things to improve like the wheel's ability to mechanically adhere to rocks or down to tree or whatever they're climbing over because they climb over whatever they want to climb over. Um, but they're still shedding weight wherever they can, getting more out of smaller engines, getting more out of gearing, getting more out of wheel design itself, making the wheels lighter but stronger because of material advances. And so, like, a lot of the stuff it's interesting because on one end of the spectrum, there are the people who will take the biggest truck they can possibly take with monster truck tires and just go wherever they feel like. But then there are also people who do go to the same places in what amount to go karts with giant tires and gear reduction. 2,000 pounds for a vehicle is really light too. That's like a couple of motorcycles.
Right. Well, and I feel like America has just gone bigger and bigger um at all levels. Like the smaller cars have gotten bigger too.
Yeah.
And then you go outside of America and nobody's driving those massive cars like that.
Oh man, I saw it was a image of the first generation of Honda Civic next to the current generation of Honda Civic, and it's grown almost 4 feet. It's almost 4 feet longer. Like there's a whole like trunk, extra trunk, and extra engine bay. Like the modern Accord is a behemoth compared to the first Accord.
Well, and you would think that would mean more metal, but it probably doesn't.
No. Yeah, they figured out how to use less metal everywhere to make it lighter so they can get better fuel economy.
Mm.
But I think that's been the trend for a while now. I think cars that were made in the 50s were extra heavy because they didn't know how to do I think it's the extruded tubing process for the frames or for the unibody stuff. There's like a whole like I mean the way that cars are made now compared to even 20 years ago is actually quite impressive. I mean, not to say that I'm advocating for the automation or automating out of human jobs, but watching robot assembly lines is really interesting. And there are human operators, but it's the kind of thing that um, I think in some cases where they have good operators and good teams to keep the programs running correctly, they can probably turn out really good work. But in the case of you know some other manufacturers, like apparently Buick's been having problems, and all of GM has been having problems with their assembly lines because they've been having cars made in China. And it's not that the Chinese don't know how to make cars; they just don't know how to make cars that are being driven by Americans. Um, and that's probably because GM doesn't know how to communicate the actual culture of American driving.
Mm.
I think that for a global company like GM, their biggest problem is they're so compartmentalized that I they might be able to produce a product that on paper is desirable, but then once it has to face the actual uh, rigors of American drivers on American roads and American traffic and demands of braking and just coming to a complete stop at the speeds that drivers in this country routinely operate, like I don't think those vehicles are meant for that. And I think that's actually the case with a lot of these things. Like I don't think that I'm not convinced that any of the modern vehicles that we see now are actually designed to be driven the way that I see them being operated. Like I don't see how it's possible for everyone to be driving like they're at the starting line of their own personal drag strip and not just be destroying their vehicles.
Well, and
Because physics is a thing and heat is
yeah.
the enemy, friction is the enemy. Like no, that we don't have lubricants that can withstand that kind of shit all the time. They wear out. Ceramic
Hmm.
coatings wear out. All of this stuff wears out. And it's funny, like whereas like old gas engines, like they if you run them slower and fewer RPMs, they wear out slower, and they can be optimized to run at low RPMs. But like electric motors, those things get hot if they run too slowly, or if there's too much of a load and they have to put too much power through the coils. Those things will start heating up. That'll affect their like long-term efficiency. Something will change though. I feel confident that science will identify like some kind of chemical matrix or composite of various substance minerals or whatever compound of some sort that will have energy density that rivals gasoline and diesel and works at the temperature ranges that liquid fuels can operate. But I also don't think that we're going to be sending precious supplies of like rare earth elements to like other planets for very much longer once the technology is developed to extract hydrocarbons from the local atmosphere and use that as a fuel supply.
I mean, I feel like if we have to do that, then we're doing the wrong things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that, like moving a dystopia to a different planet, it seems like the natural next step, but I don't think they'd be able to move that like if
But hear me out, my dude. What if we can get all the dystopian people to move to like Europa? I'm serious. Like if they all go to Mars even and they're all in
I mean,
Mars, they can.
I don't think dystopian people can ever get off the planet, let alone like not destroy things. Like the idea that Mars was ever going to be a feasible place or a feasible destination that they would actually ever be able to get there when they couldn't even get a car to go directly. Like a smaller vehicle is going to be easier to hit a bigger object with than like a bigger object, in that it's easier to control a smaller object. So like if they couldn't get a Tesla to actually hit Mars, they're never going to actually hit Mars with a fucking rocket. let's be clear about that part, because again, it's like if you can't do it with basically like if you can't throw a dart and hit something, you're not going to be able to throw a fucking javelin and hit it, like, because the physics are effectively the same, but if you can't do it with the small one, you're definitely not going to do it when it scales up. And this is why
He launched it into the asteroid belt. Oh,
this is what is it, Falcon Heavy?
yeah.
This is why
Heavy.
Falcon Heavy hasn't been able to like work, because they think that they can just take something and scale it up. But that's why electric vehicles have been a problem, because the same shit that works at RC scale doesn't work at American car scale.
Yeah.
Like it works as slightly smaller than American car scale. But if you want a fucking Hummer, if you want something that's like a Lincoln Town car, that's slightly too big for the current state of electric.
An LS1 long block, so the whole engine, everything ready just to plug into a vehicle and go, with a transmission attached, and the whole drivetrain and all of the suspension and the wheels and fuel, way less than just the battery of the average electric vehicle. That's I think that's the big
I
issue.
mean,
Is the energy density of the current battery technology is just, it's so heavy. If they could get that cut in half, then the vehicles would be safer.
but they only have had about 100 years to do that versus 300 years for internal combustion. So it's like they just haven't had the time. And so expecting it to be at the same place isn't really like,
oh no
I
don't expect it to
I
be
don't
the same
think you do. I
place.
think the market does. And that's why it's like a market, like the idea that electric motors that are 100 years in development should have the same efficiency and effectiveness with natural resources is something that we've been
it's
owning along with the natural resources for 300 years. It's not practical.
Yeah.
But that's what, like, because they're both cars and because they're both reduced to this automobile as the application of it, then the false equivalence starts to make it seem like it's natural when really it's a complete false equivalent.
There's almost zero marketing or mention of the way that batteries discharge either. Like, it doesn't matter how efficient the engine is if the motor is, if the battery can't discharge the electricity fast enough. And a lot of that comes down to the way that the actual batteries get hot when they start discharging at high rates, which makes them less efficient at discharging. It's a vicious cycle. There's like an optimal range of discharge for like a given battery's design, and since it's so uniquely tied to the motor itself, it's kind of crazy to me that, like, the motors are totally top notch. Motors can do it. Like the range extended EVs, the ones that are still powered by a small gas engine. Those things have demonstrated that kind of hybrid power plant is fantastic. because they're not even like super high powered vehicles. They can go fast enough and they can refill almost instantaneously. Like, so the motors are great. It's just that the battery's chemical composition is not, doesn't have the kind of energy density or discharge that, no, they definitely have the kind of energy discharge necessary, like with the right kind of motors, because we've seen them do wheelies and go insanely fast, and like the electric drag racers can go down the track, you know, a whole 3 seconds faster than their counterparts that are powered by gasoline. So it's not an issue of like, can they do it? It's just that right now it seems like their batteries are too heavy and they're too big. They can't make them small enough. And so they have to overcome that kind of extra weight. It means updated tire purchases, the faster period of tire replacement, and we don't really know how this will affect the roads that we have. Like our infrastructure can't even handle the semis that happen all the time, and so if there are fleets of vehicles that are, you know, twice as heavy for their footprint, that's going to add up too. But I think it's similar to like the way that like the off-roaders are trying to make sub 2,000 pound high performance machines, because weight is actually an issue. It's a really incredible time to be alive, though. Like all of these options. Like every time I look at this stuff, it's like, man, somebody else developed something that solved this issue that was like looming over the entire like subculture, and then a new issue emerges.
Well, and like you're saying, it's like the discharge needs to be there, but then you also have to be able to discharge without overheating the
Yeah.
battery, which then brings a whole like, do you have to bring in a cooling system, and then that's going to need more energy, which this becomes the scaling issue.
Yeah. It's a
And it's
vicious cycle.
that it is, and that vicious cycle is where um there's other things you can do to make a vehicle go faster or be more efficient around the discharge. But it's like that is only an option when you have the capacity to like work around that in at production scale, because then this is the issue is like if you have to create a new standard size for your vehicle, then the tooling to do that has to be worth the investment to go along with the vehicle. Otherwise, then they try to retrofit and then they start running into problems. And so I think that's where it's like the American car size being so
Huge.
big, yeah, is really what's making electric vehicles like hard, having a more difficult time crossing that threshold. Like if everybody drove European sized vehicles here, we'd already be mostly electric. And I think that's like why it's going towards the hybrid, in that also people are so hyper focused on like filling up their gas tank, because I don't know. I mean, I understand, but it's funny to me to see things that are like not even 100-year-old traditions getting to be so ingrained in culture that people can't fathom not doing those things, or like doing things a different way.
I always enjoy when I see a Tesla pull into a gas station right next to a pump, and then the person just go into the convenience store when there are actual parking spaces in
Right,
front
yeah.
of
I hate
the
when people do that
convenience
shit,
store.
though.
It's like, what the crap?
I mean, but people with gas powered cars do that shit too.
Yeah, but they might be paying for it
Um,
inside before they leave.
Well, I mean, but then I'm saying they'll do that and not get any gas,
Oh
and that
yeah,
shit's fucking annoying too. Which is
yeah,
what I'm
that's
like,
stupid.
I just hate people who like park in front of gas pumps and like aren't actually getting the gas because it's like that. That's a special type of narcissism and like hyper self focus and lack of self awareness that is almost uniquely American. Which is where again I'm like, all Americans care about is how things affect them, which is why they all want to drive these like massive vehicles that also they want to be fast enough to be like, my car is fast. I got a 0 to 60 in fucking 6 seconds or whatever. But yeah, I can also fit like 32 people in my car. And it's like,
You
they
know,
want this weird combination. Like, it's got 75 cup holders and 35 DVD players. Like,
if there was just a vehicle that, like a Miata, but sized for American-sized drivers who can't fit in Miatas, which is unfortunately a portion of the driving population. Like a slightly larger than a Miata vehicle. I'm pretty sure it's called the whatever that Subaru is, the BRZ. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. It's slightly larger than a Miata, fun to drive. And then the next step up from that's probably like a Mustang with a 4-cylinder engine or a Camaro with a 4-cylinder. No, they don't make that anymore. Um, like the obsession with high performance and utility is, these are things that don't actually coexist very well.
mm-hmm.
Like high performance utility, like what? Like pulling a boat up a mountain? Is that the kind of utility? And I don't think it is. That'd be like some extra hardcore truck stuff. I think the dilemma is that SUVs and trucks started behaving more like cars because of advances in suspension and steering design. And so people feel empowered to drive a vehicle that's gigantic like it's a smaller car because it handles like a smaller car. And smaller cars have started to handle like sports cars, and sports cars started handling like race cars, and race cars turned into spaceships on that have 5 to 10 G's of downforce when they're traveling at speed. Like, let's think about that for a second. A 2,000-pound car with 5 to 10 G's of downforce, depending on what they're doing. So, like a 10,000-pound vehicle to a 20,000-pound vehicle traveling at damn near 200 miles an hour. And hypercars and supercars generate considerable amount of downforce until you take your foot off the gas, and then all the weird shit happens. Those giant wings work on those vehicles. Holy crap.
Mm-hmm.
Someday we're going to look back on this period of YouTubery, and we're going to say, man, those bastards really ruined supercars for everyone. I'm serious.
Oh yeah.
It's like not even fun to fantasize about having a car like that, because if someone, just some normal person, gets behind the wheel and all the best they can do is crash it and not die.
I mean, anymore, I think tech bros and the YouTubers have made it so like those things are no longer the status symbol they used to be.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't represent the same thing. Like, you don't see one of those and assume it's like a famous person for a talent, or a famous person for doing something, like inventing something useful. You're like, oh, they probably scammed somebody, or oh, they probably fucking go make stupid videos where they annoy some regular people and do candid fucking pranks and almost get themselves killed or something stupid. And it's like, that's the status, that's the highest level of status that symbol is associated with now. So like, nobody really, I mean, I'm sure if somebody got to drive one, they wouldn't turn it down, but nobody's out trying to like get a fucking $250,000 car that's going to cost $13,000 to replace a light bulb on if the fucking light bulb, the headlamp goes out, and fucking anything, just remotely routine, you're gonna be paying 2,000 times the amount if you don't want your warranty voided. And so it's not something that you can, you can't really buy a supercar and turn it into a pet project without voiding your warranty. Nobody wants to do that, unless you're a fucking idiot. So it's really like it just doesn't really mean anything anymore, except like, oh, this person just wants to burn money, and that doesn't mean anything like that about the person's intelligence anymore.
Yeah.
Or anything positive.